Okay, hi. Um, those of you who have been to the Bush School campus here, you'll recognize these horses in the background that commemorate the falling of the Berlin Wall. And I'll take just a little spin here of the quad. See if you guys, right? See down there the statue of George Bush. Here's his library. Okay, so you're saying, gee, Jeff's not in Massachusetts. No, I'm actually here right at Texas A&M for a couple of days. Came down for a conference, also to meet with Professor Brown and some of the other people who are running the nonprofit program here at Texas AMU. So with that little introduction, I know I'm really late with my video this week that would normally summarize week 6, introduce week 7. I don't think I'm really going to talk much about week 6 in particular, right? Or in detail. We talked about, there's a chapter about financial resources, and there was also a chapter in the book about interorganizational collaborations. But frankly, at this point in the course, um, as I reflect on how much information is actually in this relatively little book, it really strikes me that if you look back here, this is page 27, where Professor Brown talks about the various chapters and what's in each chapter, and then you think about all of the models that are contained in each chapter. What strikes me is that the challenge for you as a student in this course and trying to read this book and use it in your real professional life is how to bring together all the sort of stuff that we've been thinking about in the different chapters and in the different realms and in the different domains and all these different conceptual frameworks that we've been talking about. How you keep all those things in your brain so that you manage them strategically in order to get your organization positioned both in relationship to the external environment and also its internal capacities, both in the, well, internal capacities, particularly as it relates to resources in the resource domain. How do you do all of that and get your organization in the right position so that it can actually produce the most public benefit possible? And some would say the most public benefit possible in the most efficient, economic, and effective manner. And that's sort of, as we think about trying to be strategic, that would be my sort of way of saying this is what you're trying to do as a big goal. I will just comment briefly on the case study, the CASA case study that we had this week. And I'm going to put an example of what I thought was one of the best papers I received along with this announcement so that you can take a look at it. Why am I doing that? Really for two reasons. One, just so that you can be clear how I marked and what I thought was really important. And I'll just say that the people who did the best on the assignment really focused on the questions of the assignment, right? There were really two parts to it. One was to talk about the monitoring by CASA of the services it provided in the shelter. And so if you go to page 228 in the book, right, there's a little chart there about monitoring the methods to monitoring services. And so if in your answer to the first part of the assignment you sort of referred back to these and crosswalked between the theory here or the methods of monitoring service, and what the CASA did and didn't do as it relates to monitoring its shelter services, well, then you did really well. Okay? And similarly, in the second part of the assignment, it asks you to talk about CASA's community involvement, community education efforts. And so if you look back in the text, starting on page 256, going through 261, there is a whole discussion there about what nonprofits do as it relates to community education. And there are some best practices also discussed there, listed and discussed, as to what effective nonprofits do when they try to do community education. And so again, if you crosswalked between the facts of the case study and the theoretical and text readings in here about community education by nonprofits, you did really well as on the paper as well. And so that all then relates. Just one last point here I wanted to make. Well, actually two, but one last point as it relates to case studies in your assignments. In the final assignment, you are asked to think about two themes or two topics that are discussed in chapters 8 through 12. That means you can pick just two in total, but they can come from any of those chapters, and relate that back to either of the case studies that we've looked at, the last two. Okay, so think about what's in the text and what it says about the topic, and crosswalk it to the case study. And if you have a nice tight analysis there, well, then you'll do real fine. Okay, and I would say, remember, there's a 2,000 to 2,500 word limit or a suggested limit. Please don't write long treatises, and you'll see from the model assignment in the CASA case study assignment of this week, brevity but clarity is really how you get a great grade. Okay? All right, and then just lastly, the reading this week had to do with Strategic Leadership, Chapter 12, and I just wanted to note one book in particular Professor Brown speaks of. He actually doesn't cite the book by name, it's in the references, but he talks about Bollman and Deal on page 341. And the book he's citing from is called Reframing Organizations. And the book talks about how great leaders can sort of see their organizations through four perspectives, four frames: a structural, a human resource, a political, and a symbolic. And I just want to highlight that book in particular because I only learned about this text after I stopped being a COO at a large nonprofit, and I wish I had read the book while I was still practicing and leading an organization, or a large organization. I thought it was, it would have helped me, I think, invaluably. It would have been invaluable to me as a manager leading a nonprofit organization, and so I just commend it to your reading if you get a chance to take a look at it. Okay? I think that's all. I'm 8 minutes 57. Okay, if you do have any questions about the final, please just give a call. Happy to speak with you about it, answer any ambiguities you might have. And I'll let it go with that. It's 9 minutes. Okay, take care.